Well, welcome to the panel on public equity markets in Africa. This is probably the most important panel of the conference, so thanks for being here. That's why we have the prime time. You're all awake, and now we can get into the good stuff. You think about it, we have so many CEOs here, building companies across Africa. We have investors, and they're all trying to make Africa grow, but one of the most important pieces of infrastructure is the public equity markets. So we have a fantastic panel here. It's kind of a diverse group, but if you think about it, it's really a great mix. We have Abubakar, who's an investment banker. I'm gonna let everyone introduce themselves more thoroughly, but I just wanted to give you the flavor. We have an investment banker. We have Thapelo from the Botswana Stock Exchange. We have Max who's a private equity fintech investor, and Adrian from the London Stock Exchange. So we have two stock exchanges, a private equity investor, and an investment banker, and myself, I'm a buy-side fund manager. So Abubakar, do you want to start and just give us a quick background? Introduce yourself really quickly, let everyone go down the line.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you everybody to be here with us. I'm Abubakar. I'm associate in the a partner in the Paxis Group, which is a Pan-African investment bank based in Senegal with offices in Abidjan and Dubai, covering more the West African region. Active both in capital market, but also in the M&A sides. And very happy to be here. I think, as said Eric, it's an important panel for the continent, for the investors, and we'll discover it. Thank you.
Hello.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Thapelo Muribame, Head of Market Development at the Botswana Stock Exchange. I represent a growing exchange, the third largest stock exchange in sub-Saharan Africa, offering both equities, fixed income products, as well as exchange-traded funds. So I'm really happy to be here today to sell our listing story and to also promote my country, Botswana.
Max.
Hi everyone, I'm Max. I'm an investment director at British International Investment, which is the British Development Finance Institution. I'm focused on financial services, equity investments.
Can you put up the volume a little bit, please?
Yeah, it is already.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm an investment director in the financial services equity team. So we are, amongst others, focused on fintechs, but also more traditional financial services provider like banks, and some of them listed.
And I'm Adrian Rimmer. I'm part of the sustainable finance team within London Stock Exchange Group, and working very closely, given the impact and potential of sustainable finance across Africa, with my colleagues in the region.
Thank you. So I thought we'd start with Thapelo and the Botswana Stock Exchange. I was in Botswana earlier this year. It's one of the smaller exchanges, or not, there are, I think, 14 or 15 in Africa, but maybe on the smaller side, but you guys are making it up in hustle and innovation and activity. And so I thought, we were talking earlier this week, and I thought everyone would love to hear all the things that you guys are working on there at the Botswana Stock Exchange.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Eric. I think let me start off by giving a bit of context into our market. Like I said, representing the Botswana Stock Exchange, we are a growing stock exchange and a formidable force within the capital markets in Africa. When you look at the type of projects that we've been engaged in, and when you look at the size of our market, particularly from a market capitalization point of view, and in terms of our listings, we do have sizable listings as well, and we are currently working on obviously growing that market. So, in terms of our market dynamics, we are a multi-product exchange offering equities, fixed income products, as well as exchange-traded funds. We are essentially a multi-currency exchange, and we offer a framework that allows different structures to be listed in our market. And to give further context, let me talk a bit about Botswana, because the stock exchange relies heavily on our country dynamics, which are quite positive for the stock exchange to thrive. We have a stable macroeconomic environment with a strong focus on price stability and that we, owe to the prudence of our government. And then we also we don't have any exchange rate controls, which is a strong selling point for our market, because essentially if you want to set up in Botswana, raise capital and expand to the rest of the world, Botswana allows for that. So you can essentially set up in Botswana and expand to the rest of the world, as we've seen some companies do through
And
our
one
market.
thing about Botswana, it's got a very strong institutional investment market. A lot of,
Exactly.
like, the Botswana pension funds are quite famous, I mean, famously large. And
Exactly. We do have a large pension fund, by the way, $12 billion at the moment. So that allows domestic companies to raise capital from the exchange with the strong support from institutional investors. And we are growing our retail investor base so that it can also support price discovery in that manner. When you look at some of the activities that we've been doing, obviously we've been promoting listings in Botswana. Like I've said, we do have the framework for that. We do have the capital. We do have a robust stock exchange that has rules and frameworks to accommodate different structures. So we've been pushing for listings aggressively, particularly looking at the pipeline that's coming from state-owned enterprises. That's really important because there's obviously some assets that have been underperforming, and with the fiscal challenges that have been experienced in the country, we feel that SOEs can tap into capital markets to privatize through a listing. And then the other area where we've been working on aggressively is the issue of SME development, which is quite important to us. In fact, we are working on a big project, which is the SME fund that allows, obviously, smaller companies to grow through the exchange. And we've been targeting, family-owned businesses, Botswana-owned companies, as well as foreign companies, which is why we are particularly here at AFSIC, because we feel it's a great opportunity to promote and push our internationalization strategy. So we've been doing a lot, and in doing that, we've been obviously promoting the pillar of regulation, where we target our regulation to ensure that it's conducive for companies that want to tap into capital markets. We've been looking at products and expanding our universe of products so that we attract, obviously, investors that I think you want to say something,
I
Eric?
was just going to say, aren't you,
Yeah.
I think you're working on a partnership with the London Stock Exchange, aren't you?
Yes, I'm getting there. So, yeah. I think Eric wants me to get to the point. So, yeah, so we
Buy-side guys have no attention span.
Yeah, so we've been pushing our outreach activities and partnerships. And yesterday we actually met with the London Stock Exchange, like you said. And we are really pushing our internationalization strategy, particularly from a dual listing perspective. We have obviously set out areas that we want to work with the London Stock Exchange on. One being the issue of harmonization, where we obviously push or fast-track listings that are coming from the UK market. Remember, we are a recognized stock exchange in the UK market, and we already have some dual listings between our markets. So fast-track listings, and obviously working on issues of fungibility and aligning other issues like settlement cycles, for instance. And the other one is our work around products. I've mentioned our strong push to attract products. So one of the areas that we're going to work on with the London Stock Exchange is to introduce FTSE-based products in our market so that we can promote visibility into our market, and obviously work on technology and all of that. So I think I also need to mention the fact that we do have a private market. We do have a private equity market within the stock exchange that allows companies to register before they eventually get to a listed environment. So we've been working on a lot. The SME fund I did touch on, and we are also introducing a commodities market. So we are looking for like-minded partners to join us on this journey, obviously. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. There's so much going on there. But what a coincidence that we have the London Stock Exchange also on this panel. So Adrian, you want to, you want to talk about the, I know you're in the sustainable part, but maybe you could also just start with the, the work the LSE is doing to grow its Africa cluster.
Sure. And I think that's a really important point, actually, and it's the foundations of what I do is the success that we've had building a dual listing environment for companies across Africa that really make that second piece work. So, I mean, we have, as you were saying, two companies dual listed from Botswana currently in London, but actually that's part of 113 African companies that are listed in London, and that's significantly more than any other exchange in the world. I mean, you talk about New York, there are 5, Euronext has 8. So to give an example of the success of African companies coming to London, raising capital from an international group of investors who understand the continent and want to deploy capital there, and also want to support the local exchanges too. So this dual listing piece, I think, is incredibly important. One thing I noticed right from the start of joining the exchange is that we have a very collaborative approach to working with other exchanges all around the world, and particularly in Africa. And I think that's incredibly helpful because you want to build local capital markets. You want to see, in my case, the transition, the sort of low carbon transition take place and provide the capital to enable that. Give a couple of examples of where that's worked really well recently. So a couple of IPOs that have taken place this year, Valterra Platinum. And that's a company that has been incredibly successful here since listing. And also Guarantee Trust. What's interesting about them is they had GDRs listed since 2007, and this year decided to convert that to a full dual listing. And that's been incredibly helpful for them to become, to be able to raise capital here. I think we've seen
Adrian, can I give one example? Because
Yeah.
our fund, we own an investment in Seplat, which is a Nigerian energy company, and they're dual listed in London.
Yeah.
They had a capital markets day, and I was pretty surprised how many people. First of all, you guys have a fantastic place for hosting those events, but then I think there were like 60. I mean, I think it brought in just global energy investors to look at the company, and I just like, wow, this is really cool how you're in London, you're with the dual listing, and you're getting a pretty big audience.
It's true, and we have a team that really does that outreach incredibly well. A platform we have called Issuer Services, which basically engages with the listed companies, but also through that with the investor base. And so we bring those events together incredibly powerfully. So I think that's the kind of key story from our perspective in terms of this. We work with 9 of the exchanges providing their trading and clearing technology too. So to your point around building those deeper relationships between the exchanges, not just at a regulatory level, but at an infrastructure level, I think is going to be key to continuing that success.
Well, we've had 2 exchanges. Now let's talk, what another coincidence, we have a potential customer on the panel. And Max, you have actually, we're with the British investment, is it British International? How does the IIs go?
International investment.
International investment. And you're in the position of holding a portfolio of both currently listed large banks around Africa, but you're also in the weeds with Africa's growing tech scene and all the fintechs, and who are going to be thinking about where do they list at some point. And so you're in those conversations. And so maybe just give us some flavor of what you're doing and maybe how those conversations are looking. I'm sure these exchanges would love to hear that.
No, absolutely. And maybe before I get to the more like kind of direct responses to those questions, I mean, I love the title of the panel really, which is the uncovering opportunities. Because just anecdotally, like 10 years ago when I joined BI as an investor, and I did my first investment, I was in an East African geography in Kenya. I was so surprised how many stock exchanges are actually already there and how many listings are happening or have happened over the even like prior decades in those countries. So it seemed to me like the first impression was, wow, this is a great and a very fertile ground particularly for private equity.
The market's everywhere.
Yes, yeah. Then the next 10 years working on being in the weeds in those investments, unfortunately the reality turned out a bit different. So when we look at investments, and they are very often it's very broadly, but like from a value, like a market cap of between 50 to, let's say, 500 million. So that's kind of like a sweet spot.
50 to 100 million or
500?
500 million.
Yeah, it's quite a wide range.
Yep.
But when we hold those investments, and a lot of those investments also over the last 10 years, despite a very difficult macroeconomic environment, have, I think, performed very well and have built the operational capacities, also the compliant capacities to list. African listings are unfortunately not very often on the radar. It's more the international stock exchanges which those companies think about when they
Sorry,
think
when
about
you build this company up and all the processes and ready to IPO, the conversation does not turn to listing in Africa.
Not very often, no, unfortunately
Oh.
not. So I think that the two stock exchanges which are, I mean, there's one, and again, like the LSE is obviously, I think, is from the international markets, is the most like kind of familiar with African markets. So there's a lot of like talk about listing on the LSE. I think there are new, let's call it challenger markets, like in the UAE and Abu Dhabi, who and also Saudi Arabia, who kind of like look at African listings. But local stock exchanges are unfortunately not as part of the conversation as we would hope them to be. And particularly look at British International Investment, we have a development mandate. So every time we look at an exit, we also think about responsible exits. And at least a dual listing at a global international or like an international market and a local stock exchange. I mean, for me, that sounds the most responsible exit, because you also give the countries which have built those fantastic companies the opportunity to invest either directly or through pension funds in those companies.
Can I just comment briefly? I mean, one of the interesting things I thought was the 45% of African companies listed in London are dual listed. And the average for dual listings is 14%. So it just shows the power of what that can achieve.
Yeah.
On top of that, the African companies, if you treat them as a cohort on the stock exchange, have significantly outperformed the major benchmarks, so the FTSE 100 and the
It
MSCI.
outperformed the UK market?
Yeah. And the MSCI benchmark. But the point is, what that helps to do is really show that there's an investor appetite and that those companies are successful. So the next time a company is looking to come to market domestically, there is a track record you can talk to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so look, this is from my perspective and from the companies which I represent. I think this opportunity of a dual listing, I think it needs to be brought out more in the open, because I think
That's like the good solution, right?
Yeah.
You get your international exposure, but you also get your local market.
yes.
Well, we have another, guess who else is on our panel? Abubakar, I think you have something to tell Max to consider, right? I think you have a view on this topic.
Thank you very much, Eric. And I think for going to Max, if you see the panel, we say exploring growth, uncovering opportunities in Africa's public equity market. And it's very important we understand that the public equity market and public market globally, it's important that we develop them, because if we would like to invest and develop the continent, we need to have stronger capital markets. And for this, what we can discover is that we have an untapped potential with the public markets. Let's say we have around 25 stock exchanges in the continent, but most of them are less than 25% of GDP in terms of size, where the peers can be Vietnam or Malaysia, except South Africa, is around 90 to 100%. So meaning that if we even reach this 100%, that will be more than $500 billion that we can release. So this is one of the first point to see that this is the capacity we need in this market. The second point, and I think it's important, is regarding how we can now develop or size this opportunities market. We have sometimes some players working in silo, meaning the private equity coming, and we have more VC funds, we have more funds in the region coming, and it's very good, because as we said, to develop the continent, you need all the different asset classes. So you need the private equity guy, you need the venture guy, you need the banks, the capital markets. But what we can see is that now, once you have all these companies, it's important that they partner, the private equity guys and also the capital markets, and exit through the IPOs or even raising financing through the capital markets. Why? Because once you develop these countries, this mid-cap, you need as an exit, and even to help them on top of that to access more financing and more quality financing, to have these links and not working in silo. And it's something that we can see that, you see that, for example, we have less than 15% of exit from private equity coming through the market. But instead of considering it as a plan B, if you work together, because when they invest in companies, what you would like is to develop the private sectors, to help them be regional champion, create job, access and create value for the continent. But for this, on top of the equity, you need more capital, you need more investing, and that's why I think the capital market could be done. Now, if you're a big player, let's say you can consider the London Stock Exchange, you can consider other things. But the right of the structure of our economy is that it's more small and mid companies, SMEs. And this is the biggest part of the economy. So if you would like to use capital market as a pivotal means in order to develop the continent, we need to address how we can finance this SMEs and how we can help also the private equity guys to exit through this market, create value that will be absorbed by investors that can be local but also foreign investors, and this value stay here. The other point, if I may, is why it's important to make this link, and after I'll come to the role also that DFI could play on this, is roughly we have the banking sector financing, because when I say the capital markets are underdeveloped, meaning that we rely on the banking system for 80 to 90 maybe % of the financing. And the right thing is that the banks cannot afford, and it's not their role also to take all this type of risk. When you add on this, you have Basel 2 and 3 coming that can create what we could call a credit crunch. So the long-term lungs for our economies will be the market, because they can extend where the banks stop. And how now DFI can help on all of this is to anchor this type of transaction. It's in their objective and role to develop the capital markets, to develop, not only develop the capital, but to develop the continent, create job, create value for population. And for this, by the means they can have, they can position their anchor investors in IPOs. They can come also in the local currency, which is also important, because to have more impact, we need to find a way, and there is different option to can have more financing, more investing from DFI that will be in the local currency side. And
Babacar, I just want to make sure, I think I heard that bell that I just want to open it up for any questions. And I just one angle, I think going back to the Botswana Stock Exchange, the DFIs, the private equity, the banks, but I think growing that retail piece is also super important.
Very important.
All right, you were the first, you had your hand up first.
In Europe today, let's say the same industry people think that capital markets are too fragmented and they're like 10, 20 times bigger than ours. Do we really feel like we'll be able to develop something that is meaningful?
The bell was wrong? Oh, it fell. We have more time, the bell fell.
Without foreign exchange in one location.
Do we need a mega Africa exchange? Is that what you're saying?
Can we do something meaningful like without having just one capital market somewhere and having a little bit of size, liquidity, and all that goes with that? And how politically we make that happen?
Are you saying should we have one exchange, or can we do it without?
Only one exchange. I mean, at the Europe size, people feel like you just need one exchange to not
Yes.
with the other guys. When you look at the markets, they're already very tiny. So
Yes, the foreign investor says, wouldn't it be great if there was just one Africa exchange? That'd be so convenient.
I mean, for the, if you want to finance, everybody, you need some place where you have liquidity, where you have skills.
Ooh, what do we say to that?
Can I respond to that?
Okay, you on that?
Yeah, I just want to say that that's a work stream that the African Union is currently working on, in terms of seeing if Africa can integrate at that level. I just also want to add that there are already pockets of integration happening within Africa itself. If you look at the SADC region, for instance, we are currently working on projects to integrate from a trading perspective and also from a settlement perspective as well. And there's also the Africa Exchanges Linkages project that is working on addressing issues of cross-border trading between 28 exchanges within Africa. And also within West Africa itself, already there's, I can think of 2 exchanges that are integrated across different markets. BRVM, it's French, so don't expect me to
I'll do it
give
for
you the full name. BRVM, and there's also BVMAC that covers not just one country, but multiple countries. So there's already pockets of integration, and that obviously also allows for visibility within the African market as well, while we are working towards that bigger project, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah, if I may just add, there is also the Africa, I think, African Exchange Linkage project,
Yes.
which is ongoing, and I think that may help. And but it's very important, because if we had the opportunity, even not one exchange, but even one big regional exchange. BRM, as she said, is from the Waimi region, where I'm from.
There's one other exchange where you could trade all these stocks, right?
I actually was going to say that I think you have to be a bit careful what you ask for sometimes, because you could make the same argument at a global level, right? And so I think harmonization is really key. The danger of having one single marketplace is actually that you lose a lot of access to capital for other companies. A completely different example is, we're seeing the 2 biggest listings in London this year have been US companies. Why are they listing here? It's because they're invisible in their domestic market. And these are, $1 billion plus market cap companies. They're not small companies, but they are tiny in the US context. And so I think there's a real risk that if you kind of
You need
go
that connection
far,
between the local market,
yeah.
local.
So, but the more harmonization you can get, and we see this in ASEAN as well, and we see it in my area around areas like things like ESG disclosures, making those consistent, making the rules more consistent will enable more people to engage with the markets that they have.
All right.
I'm Sven von Schilling of Frontier X. First of all, thanks a lot for these very insights you shared with us. I'd like to pick up on something that Ababka said.
Yeah.
I agree, there is not only untapped potential, but I think there's a significant need to fund Africa. As far as I see it, traditional financial markets, be it equity or debt, have not succeeded. So my question to you is, what is your view on the tokenization of real-world assets to really get it going, in particular in regard to SMEs? We are building a platform, Frontier X, to do exactly that thing, to unlock the funding gap in Africa and to unlock the growth of African societies and companies. What's your view on that?
Yeah, thank you very much for this contribution. I think it's totally agree. We need, and we can see it, because as part of when the fintech come in place globally in the market with digitalization and payment and all of this, that help a lot more than what we have seen in developed countries. Why? Because everybody have access to a mobile phone, but maybe they don't have a banking account, so that can help in the transaction. And also, in order to secure, but also on top of it, also expand the access of all these assets we have in the continent, that will be way we need to consider and make the leapfrog. Making the classic way will not help us. We need also, I think, to have the right shortcut, and that is part of them.
Yeah, and sorry, Eric, maybe just to add.
Yeah, go ahead. Jump in here.
Yeah, my name is Aupa. I work with Tapelo from the Botswana Stock Exchange. Just to confirm that RWAs, or Real World Assets Tokenization, is very much a program at the Botswana Stock Exchange, and I don't think it's unique to the Botswana Stock Exchange. So if
You're doing that too?
Yes, we are working on that. With a view of actually going live early in Q1 next year, 2026. So if you do have a platform that you want to engage with the Botswana Stock Exchange on, please do get in touch with us after this. Thank you.
And I think this is coming more generally. We've just 2 weeks ago launched our private funds market, and that's built upon our digital markets infrastructure. So that's us taking it. So our CEO's perspective is we want to be the first stock exchange in the world to be agnostic over whether people want to raise capital on public markets or private markets. And part of that includes tokenization, digitization of markets, particularly on the private side. So we have, I think, it's a common theme across these markets work, and it applies really strongly in the environmental area. So ally tokenization with carbon markets, and you've got something really quite powerful. So we have a carbon market designation that we've launched, and I was on a panel just last week with 3 African companies that are, one's a Ghana-based, very large forestry developer, another in Malawi that's afforestation and cook stoves, and another is energy access in Ethiopia. All of them in some shape or form using carbon finance, all of them looking at these sorts of techniques and technologies.
And using a token as a...
Exactly. So it's definitely, I think, a growing part of how people are looking at this market.
Anyone else?
Yes, thank you. My name is Leseho Gizile. I'm from a company listed in the stock exchange in Botswana, a real estate investment company. My question is to Max, but first, before I get to my question, I just would like to commend the stock exchange for the solutions that they're bringing. The reason why we're here specifically as a company is to go on a capital raise. And one of the challenges that we've been experiencing is low liquidity in the stock exchange. So I'm really excited to see how the solutions unfold in terms of extending the market and extending the reach with which we can use to raise capital as listed companies. My question to you, Max, is from your experience, you did mention that the exits into the IPOs were a reasonable route for most of the companies that you looked into. But in your personal experience and view, why was that not a success in most of the companies that you were handling in terms of listing in the local stock exchanges and then coming here, for example, in the London Stock Exchange? So what was the main reason, and what do you think can be the solution over and above the solutions that we've already touched on? Thank you.
Yeah, look, it's a very good question, but I think ultimately when companies, and those companies we usually invest in are not the SMEs, so they're the larger companies, the tech companies, so again, who eye valuations sometimes north of 500 billion, sometimes like north of $1 billion. There is this intrinsic assumption that there's not enough liquidity in local markets to support those type of valuations, which I think is, obviously it's reasonable, but there are also exceptions. You have obviously very large listed companies in local markets as well. Safaricom is one example in Kenya. That's a very liquid and company with a large market cap. So it's mostly around this liquidity. The other thing is, of course, if you choose any market, and this is more to the fragmentation point, if you choose Nigeria or if you choose Kenya, and if you choose this only, you are a little bit stuck with an investor base, which obviously is not global. It's very much local. So you don't want to be that stuck. So again, that's why you choose a global market where you can secure much more pots of capitals. Again, I'm a bit kind of repeating myself here, but I think the solution to this is probably not an exclusive local listing or an exclusive global listing, but kind of joining up the stock exchange, which I'm very happy to hear that you're doing this with the London Stock Exchange. But it's all around this liquidity and the pots of liquidities you can reach.
Any last questions? All right. I'm just going to leave one last thing. As a public equity investor, the valuations on public equities in Africa are amazing right now. Just, tagging on to what the economist, I think it was David, said last panel. You have undervalued currencies, undervalued equities, foreign investors exited during all the turmoil. It probably is a phenomenal entry point for African public equities in general right now.
Yeah.
And I told you this is going to be the best panel.
Thank you.